So, in conclusion, yes, I will try to get back to working on videos, and no, you won't have to wait another 12 months to get it. I promise this time. Well, you know what they say.
A promise is a promise, and we must keep it.
So, as you all may or may not know, I said in the update video that I was working on another video after the introduction video came out. But I wanted to redo the video, since for one, I never finished it, and two, I just didn't really like how it was going. So, I redid the video, and I think it turned out way better than the original. But before the list starts, I just want to say that all these picks are my opinion. So, if you feel that your list is different, try listing it in the comments. It would be interesting to see how different our opinions are. So, without any further analysis, here are my top 10 favorite Thomas characters. Number 10. George the Steamroller. Throughout the show, George made only 3 appearances. He appeared in Season 4 in the episode Steamroller, Season 5's By George and Lady Hat's Birthday Party, and made a brief cameo in Calling All Engines. George is probably one of the most unhinged characters out of the entire show. For instance, he is the only road vehicle who has ever made an engine crash on purpose.
George was now enjoying himself. "Ripping up rails," he chortled. "What a life!" "What do you think of this, Thomas?" Thomas took no notice. George felt insulted. "You're a useless blue puffball." But Thomas didn't hear. "I'll show him who's boss." At last, the workmen reached the level crossing. "What shall we do here?" "Tear it up, tarmac it," said George. So they did, but not properly, and George knew it. Later, Thomas was traveling home on the same line. He was pulling freight cars filled with vegetables. The signalman had forgotten to warn his driver about the crossing. "That's nice, we don't need to stop," said Thomas happily. "Yes, we do," called his driver. But it was too late.
Is involved with the crash with almost every appearance he makes, and is one of the only characters to ever tell another character to, let's just say, unalive themselves.
"Call yourself a car? You're a disgrace to the road. Find yourself a scrapyard."
Despite his appearances being great, most of the time, he doesn't make any other appearances besides those 3, so we don't get to see too much of his potential. This will become an ongoing trend for the rest of the list. So, it's for that reason that he is only at number 10 on the list. Number 9. Diesel 10. When you think of Thomas villains from the series, most people will first think of Diesel 10, and for good reason. He was first introduced in the movie Thomas and the Magic Railroad back in 2000, and would only make occasional appearances going onwards. Making appearances in Calling All Engines in 2005, Day of the Diesels in 2011, and would make his first and only appearance in an episode in Season 17's The Missing Christmas Decorations. But let's be honest, we all know which version of him is the best. Not only is this his most threatening version of him, but he's also one of the many reasons people don't think the movie was completely awful. Despite the praise I've given him, most of his peak only came from Magic Railroad. His other appearances are varied, to say the least. At one point, he's portrayed as just being grumpy, and at another, he's back to being evil, but he has a confusing and convoluted plan. Because of this, he's only at number 9 on the list, just slightly higher than George, since at least he made more appearances. Number 8. Spencer. There's a certain trend that Spencer seems to have about the series, where in almost every appearance he makes, he's usually the character who carries those episodes the most. And in some cases, some of those episodes can be some of the best episodes of that season. Well, sometimes. However, one of my favorite aspects about him is the rivalry between him and Gordon, being shown in episodes like Gordon and Spencer, Confused Coaches, and that's it. Yeah, unfortunately there aren't many episodes where it is shown, but despite that, he still does have a lot of other great appearances besides this, like in Season 8's Edward the Great, and the 2009 movie Hero of the Rails, where he's portrayed as the main villain. Despite the great appearances he has, he doesn't appear as often, and like I said before, it's only sometimes he's portrayed well. So for that reason, he's only at number 8 on the list. Number 7. Bill and Ben. Now I know you might be saying, wait, but that's 2 characters. Shouldn't that mean they should be in separate tiers? Which, for granted, is valid. But at this point, both characters are only ever seen together most of the time. Plus, they're twins. So, going off of that, I might as well just put them in the same spot. Anyways, in my opinion, Bill and Ben are honestly the best twin characters of the series. Now, I know that might seem like a hot take considering the other twins that exist, but Bill and Ben have always been my favorite for me. I especially like their episodes where they're part of other characters, most of the time Diesels, like the Diesel from Season 2 and Double Teething Troubles from Season 5. Overall, I like Bill and Ben a lot, but there are episodes where it does feel like they're more so just portrayed as twins that can't get along, and that's their whole character. But thankfully, that's not the case most of the time. However, it does hold them down a little bit, so it's for that reason they're only at number 7 on the list. Number 6. Hero. Hero is one of those characters that kinda pops in time to time, but it's never too often. So at a lot of points, it's always a pleasant surprise to see him appear again. And when he does, the episodes he's in are usually great, like Henry's Hero and No One Must Night Sender from Season 17. Not to mention how interesting his backstory is. And sure, it does retcon Edward being the first engine on Sodor, but at this point, the Mal series and CGI series are their own separate canons, so... Anyways, compared to most other characters introduced in the Sherman Miller era, Hero was definitely one of the best characters introduced out of the field, and he was the very first character of the era, which makes it even more ironic they made a character this well written. Overall, Hero was a great character with a lot of charm to him, but there is another character from the same era who I think is just slightly better, which leads us into... Number 5. Luke. Despite his lack of appearance, like I haven't said that about anybody else, Luke is probably one of the best backstories of the entire show. I mean, tell me any other character who thought they just killed someone. Not to mention how nice it is to see him going for a darker tone considering that era. Why couldn't you have been like him? Now, of course, there's definitely more to Luke than just his backstory, like his episodes, despite there being like 3 going off the top of my head. These episodes are pretty good, especially Luke's new friend being like one of the most wholesome Thomas episodes of all time. While on the topic of narrow gauge engines, let's move on to... Number 4. Duke. If I had the choice to bring back one character from the show who has been absent for ages, it would 1000% be Duke. Duke has without question the best episodes from Season 4 yet. Grand Puff, Sleeping Beauty, Bulldog, and You Can't Win are absolute classics among that era. Also, is it just me, or why does this character feel a lot like Toby in my opinion? Think about it. In some ways, he has his wisdom, and in some ways, his enthusiasm. It's kinda hard to explain, but if you watch the episodes listed before and you know Toby's character, it might be easier to understand. Speaking of Toby, he is next on the list, and starting off the top 3 characters. Toby's the type of character where there could be 2 engines arguing, and he would just sit back and watch it happen, and it will never not be funny. However, there is more to him than that, such as his moments of him being shown to have quite a bit of wisdom, and has done quite a lot of remarkable things too, like being a shelter for some lambs in Toby and a Little Lamb, or helped warn the villagers about a dam flood in Toby and the Flood. Gotta really respect the guy. However, most of Toby's greatness only came from the classic era, and or somewhat in the Brenner era. Somewhat. Because in every other era, he is nothing like he used to be. Although, that could be said for most of the other characters on this list, and in general, so... Other than those appearances, Toby is still one of the best characters in the series, along with the next 2 characters, of which we will get into... Number 2. Duck. Duck is surprisingly one of the only characters to actually stay true to his original character, even past the classic era. Good for him. Duck is home to a lot of fantastic and iconic episodes from the show, like the Duck and Diesel trilogy, Duck Takes Charge, All at Sea, etc. Honestly, Duck's best moments in the series are when he's paired with other characters, like Percy, and Stebney. but it's most of the time Percy. Like other classic characters, Duck would reappear in the Brenner era, and also season 12, but he didn't do much there, so it don't matter much. Where, as a character, he stays pretty much the same as he used to be back then, although his episodes this era were more so just alright compared to the classic era. But other than that, Duck I still feel deserves pretty high on this list for how great he was back then and in the Brenner era, which is why he is at number 2 on the list. Now, the moment you've been waiting for, the number 1 spot, and the character who will be holding first on this list is Billy.
Billy!
Okay, that was such a joke, obviously. But for real though, the number 1 character on this list goes to no one else but Edward. Edward was the very first character created by the Reverend Dodger, and is the character who kickstarted this entire 79-year-long franchise, and Edward lives up to that name. Edward has been shown to prove his old age, despite the comments of other characters, and some of these characters have even grown respect for him for the things he's done, and considering those conditions, it is very much deserved. Despite his ups and downs of his character as the eras came and went, even during those bad portrayals, he's had his moments to shine in almost all of them. And it all goes to show how important and great of a character he is, and, in my opinion, wholeheartedly deserves to be at the top of the list as my favorite character of the series.